It was a warm summer evening, and I was cruising along a quiet highway that seemed to stretch on forever. This trip was supposed to be my escape from the daily grind, a chance to clear my head. Just as I settled into the rhythm of the road, I noticed a car parked on the shoulder with its hood up. Next to it stood a figure, waving for help. Against my better judgment, I decided to stop. After all, if I were in trouble, I'd hope someone would help me. I pulled over, rolled down my window, and called out, "Need a hand." The man approached, a tall guy with a scruffy beard and an anxious look in his eyes.
My car overheated. I think it's just a radiator issue, but I can't get it to start.
He explained, glancing nervously at the darkening sky. Despite my reservations, his desperation compelled me to help. "Okay, let's take a look." I hopped out and joined him by the car. He pointed to the engine while I tried to assess the situation. It didn't look good, but his genuine concern was palpable. After a few futile attempts to fix it, I realized he might need a tow. I glanced at my phone. No signal. "Looks like we're out of luck," I muttered.
Yeah, I figured.
He sighed, wiping sweat from his brow.
Do you mind if I ride with you to the nearest town? It's about 10 miles up the road.
Despite a knot forming in my stomach, I found myself nodding. "Sure, hop in." As we drove, he began to open up, sharing details about his job and family, which made him seem relatable. Yet something about his demeanor bothered me. He kept glancing at me from the corner of his eye, as if gauging my reactions. Then he mentioned a mishap from a previous trip, a tale of getting lost and encountering strange people in a remote area.
You never really know who to trust out here.
He said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Yeah, true," I replied, my voice cautious. Approaching the town, he suddenly said,
You know, I don't think I want to go to town. Let's just drive for a bit longer.
What do you mean?" I asked, my heart starting to race.
Just, let's see where the road takes us.
He grinned, a chilling edge to his smile. "I think you should get out now," I said firmly. He laughed, but it wasn't friendly.
Oh, we're just getting started.
I knew I had to escape. Up ahead, I saw a diner bathed in neon lights. I swerved into the parking lot, jumped out, and sprinted inside, breathless. The man followed, but stopped short, eyes darting. A waitress noticed and called the authorities. Relief washed over me as I realized I was finally safe from my unsettling encounter. It started as a simple road trip, just a chance to clear my head after a grueling week. I packed my car with snacks, playlists, and a sense of freedom as I hit the open highway. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the landscape, and in that moment, I felt invincible. But as the miles rolled by, fatigue began to creep into my consciousness. I fought to stay alert, cranking up the music and letting the cool night air rush in through the windows. Yet, no matter how hard I tried to shake off the drowsiness, it clung to my eyelids like a weight. I pulled over at a rest area, splashed cold water on my face, and stretched my legs. It should have revived me, but as I got back behind the wheel, a familiar heaviness resumed its grip. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, illuminated only by the narrow beam of my headlights. I glanced at the clock. It was nearing midnight. I fought the urge to close my eyes, repeating to myself, "Focus on the road." But the rhythmic hum of the tires against the asphalt began to lull me into a dangerous trance. That's when I saw a flicker of movement in the rearview mirror. Initially, I dismissed it as another car. But this vehicle was too close, its headlights blindingly bright in my mirrors. Anxiety knotted in my stomach. I hit the gas, hoping to put some distance between us, but the car behind matched my speed, glued to my tail. With each glance in the mirror, my unease grew. Who were they? Why wouldn't they pass? My heart thundered as I turned onto a less traveled road, hoping the winding paths would lose them. But they persisted, relentless. I tried to shake the dread, focusing on the road ahead, yet every blink threatened to plunge me back into fatigue. Suddenly, the headlights behind me dimmed briefly, then reappeared. I caught a glimpse of the driver, a face twisted into a chilling grin. I needed to escape. Fast. Spotting a gas station up ahead, I swerved into the parking lot, desperate for safety. I leaped out, heart pounding, and watched as the car slowed but didn't stop. It turned around and vanished into the night, leaving me breathless and trembling. I stood there trying to piece together what had just happened. The road trip started like any other. I was heading to my family's secluded cabin, a place full of memories from summers spent fishing and hiking. I was looking forward to the peace and quiet. My GPS was handling the directions just fine as I enjoyed the scenic drive. But everything started feeling different as soon as I left the main highway. It got isolated, the kind of quiet you feel right down to your bones. Tall trees lined the narrow road, their branches forming a canopy, and with every mile I felt more alone. I couldn't shake a small voice in my head telling me to turn back, but I ignored it and kept driving. A few hours in, I stopped at a little dimly lit gas station to fill up the tank. The place was dead quiet except for the buzzing of the fluorescent lights. The cashier, an older guy with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes, was there when I paid. He casually asked,
Headed to the cabin up north?
and it was like he knew something I didn't. I nodded, feeling a shiver crawl down my spine.
Be careful.
He said, leaning in a bit too close.
Some folks don't make it back.
I laughed it off nervously, thinking it was just small-town chatter. But the way he looked at me kept nagging in the back of my mind as I got back into my car. Back on the road, I tried to brush off the weird feeling. But as night fell, it was like a heavy curtain of darkness just dropped. My car's headlights were cutting through it as the road wound on. It was super creepy how the trees seemed to close in, and I started seeing shadows out of the corner of my eye. Then my phone buzzed with a notification. I glanced down and saw a message from an unknown number. Turn back! You're in danger! My heart just about jumped out of my chest. I thought it had to be some glitch, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Each mile felt like a stretch into something sinister, and even cranking up the music didn't help drown out the panic. Finally, I was relieved to see a sign that said, the cabin was just a couple of miles ahead. That relief didn't last, though. As I went around a bend, suddenly there was a person, right in the middle of the road. Their face was a total mystery in my headlights. I slammed on the brakes and stopped just inches away from them. My hands were shaking so badly. The person stepped closer, and under the harsh light, I realized I still didn't know if what lay ahead was safe. In that terrifying moment, I realized a lot of times it's maybe better not to reach your final destination. The highway stretched out before me, a long, lonely ribbon of asphalt slicing through the night. Several hours into my drive, I had left behind the chaos of city life for a weekend retreat at my family's cabin. The sounds of my favorite playlist filled the car, but the rhythmic hum of the tires began to lull me into a stupor. Fatigue crept in, and I knew I needed a break. I pulled into a dimly lit rest area, relieved to see a couple of other cars parked nearby. The air was still and heavy, starkly contrasting with the bustling energy of the city I'd just left. I stepped out to stretch, the cold air biting at my skin, and splashed water on my face at the restroom sink. Feeling slightly refreshed, I hesitated about continuing my drive in the dark. As I got back into my car, I noticed a figure lingering at the edge of the parking lot. My heart quickened as he approached. An unkempt young man with scruffy hair and worn clothes. He looked lost and desperate. I rolled down my window slightly, curiosity mingling with caution. Can I help you? I asked.
I need a ride.
He said, his voice shaky.
I got stranded out here.
I hesitated. The rest stop was isolated, and something about him set off alarm bells in my mind. I'm really not going far, I replied, trying to keep my tone firm.
Please, just to the next town. I won't cause any trouble, I promise.
His pleading eyes made it hard to say no, and against my better judgment, I unlocked the door. He climbed in, offering a weak smile that felt more like a mask than reassurance. Silence filled the car as we drove. I could feel the tension simmering in the air. I stole glances at him. He seemed on edge, his eyes darting around as if expecting someone to appear. What happened? I finally asked, breaking the silence.
Just some bad luck.
He muttered, looking away. Minutes passed, and I felt increasingly uncomfortable. The unease settled deep in my stomach. Suddenly, he blurted out,
Pull over.
Confused and startled, I quickly steered the car to the side of the road. Before I could process what was happening, he flung open the door and bolted into the night, disappearing into the darkness. I sat there, heart pounding, unsure of what had just happened. Adrenaline surged through me as I realized how easily I could have been in danger. I took a deep breath, my hands trembling on the steering wheel, and decided to leave that rest area behind. The encounter with the stranger at the rest area left me shaken, but it also taught me a valuable lesson about listening to my instincts.